session. Today's session brings together PhD researchers from 4 leading UK universities, SOAS, Dundee, Durham, and Angelia, to explore innovative ideas in Islamic economics and finance. We have 4 main topics to discuss on this session. The first topic is Islamic commercial law and legal solution for disputes. The second topic is Islamic socio-economics concept in sustainability and ESG. The third topic is Islamic economics and contemporary economics issues. The last topic is Islamic banking and investment. I am honored to introduce our esteemed panel of professors who will be providing feedback on today's presentation. Professor Mehmed Asutai, and Professor Elijah, and Professor Jasim Al-Uqla. Welcome, professors. Now we will move on to the core of our session. Each student will have from 10 to 12 minutes to share their research, including their topic, methodology, key findings, and how their work contributes to the field of Islamic economy. After each presentation, the panel will have from 5 to 7 minutes to provide a feedback to the presenter. Our first topic of today is Islamic commercial law and legal solution for disputes. Please join me in welcoming our first presenter, Mr. Abdul Qadir Thomas from SOAS University of London. Please, Mr. Abdul Qadir. The clicker is here. Again, you can use this or this.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, this is fun. I can't see. Okay. So my topic is trying to find maqasid tools to evaluate secular laws effectively. And the inspiration is very much to do with the conflict between modern economic structures and classical legal responses and how they've been dealt with in countries like Bahrain. So the time frame that I'm looking at is a multi-stage period over 1930 until 2018. And then some of the things that we're looking at are really the types of shifts the Kingdom of Bahrain has had in their insolvency resolution during this 100-year period, in which they transfer from a highly pluralistic legal environment to a very narrow-focused or seemingly narrow-focused Western environment. And so when we go back to the 1930s and 1920s, the first thing we notice about Bahrain is they have 6 legal fora to deal with insolvency, but all of them have almost the same outcomes. And so there's pluralism without necessarily distinction. At that same time in the 1930s, the US formalizes bankruptcy reorganization as a legal concept, and that will not come to play into the Gulf countries until the global financial crisis, when our capita seeks protection, not under local law, not under English law, but under Chapter 11 in the United States. Plurality includes Sharia courts. Sharia courts honored what's called the absolute priority rule. I have collateral, I take it when you don't pay me. I'm the first creditor, he's the second, I collect before he does. So that sort of legalism is overturned by reorganization, which starts to introduce something I'll call relative priority in my thesis. Prior to the global financial crisis, the United Kingdom was an absolute priority environment. Saudi Arabia was, UAE was, Bahrain was as well. So it's really changes towards reorganization are introduced post the global financial crisis. And one of the issues that I'm questioning or asking about and seeking to answer is, what do you do when you are stated as a Sharia law environment, but actually you pass a law that is secular without Sharia input. So it means we'll be looking backwards. And some of the main concerns we're looking at are infinite life corporations, the modern corporation. How does that affect how you treat an insolvency? Going concern concept, what does that mean in terms of dealing with a business that is unable to pay its debts today? Reorganization plans that are adopted by a majority of qualified voters, and concepts of cram up or cram down, in which creditors, senior or junior, are denied part of the payment that they might otherwise be due. So those are all the new issues that arise both in the latest Bahraini law, but also in America's Chapter 11, in one of the recent laws in England and one of the recent laws in France. And so there are risks that come from absolute priority, enforcement of rules, and community approaches. So reorganization is really looking holistically at a community. How do I stop harm from expanding beyond a certain point? And effectively, sorry about this slide, it seems to not come out so as well as we hope. The theory on reorganization is community needs supersede contracts. The theory on contract enforcement, or APR, is that contracts come before community. And each one has its own problems. APR could criminalize or stigmatize debtors. It could cause premature business exit. In other words, the business could be reorganized and it's not. But for the community approach, you could. So what I wanted to do is start to look at the reorganization theory from a Maqasid perspective. And I turned first to Jasser Oda. And he has a very nice way of mind mapping the issues of Maqasid and a particular problem. So our problem is insolvency, and our objective is to reduce the harms caused by insolvency, and then we need to work through a number of sub-issues, and I'll show that in the next slide. So when I come to the sub-issues, I narrowed the objectives. I want to preserve wealth. I really hate law and economics. I despise it. Why? Because law and economics never ask whose wealth. And in fiqh, I think we're asked to ask exactly that question, whose wealth? So preservation of the widest universe of wealth possible is the question I'm looking at here, as opposed to the narrow wealth of the creditor. Prevention of harm to the largest number of parties. And then how do we do that? We save a viable enterprise. And so we've looked at different elements of Quranic principles, specific ayahs, who are the stakeholders involved, what are the values we're looking to achieve, and then what are the possible proofs that we have to get to where we would like to go. So then, one of the issues within Maqasid al-Sharia that I feel is not present in every dialogue we have, although interestingly enough, it's very much taken at the top at the recent Central Bank of Malaysia's rules on Maqasid approaches to banks' resolution and bank difficulties, is we need to understand if there's a textual mandate that we're looking at, or if we're dealing with a case of necessity on a unique case, or necessity on a wide case, the broadest case, the urgent necessity. And so the questions I try to ask, and as I walk through the issues, are, does the primary text address the issue? How? Is economic transformation a public policy? Because a lot of times insolvency policy is actually part of a country's economic policy. In fact, it's a stated objective in the 2018 Bahrain reorganization law. Interestingly enough, ethics, morality, and fair play are frequently part of governance as opposed to law. And then next, what's the policy outcome that people are looking for? Social justice. So these are sort of writ large, broad topics. And I want to narrow them down if I can. And so I've looked to two modernists to try to understand the tools to narrow things down. One is Ibn Ashur, who passed away in 1973, but in his work on Maqasid al-Sharia, he starts to think about the modern economy and the types of things that we deal with today. And then the second layer is with Imran Niazi's interpretation of Shatibi, because Imran Niazi tries to bring it into principles of modern comparison. So just from Ibn Ashur, our maqsad is to protect wealth, monetary rights, prevent thief, all that good stuff. Policy objectives, protect creditors. But now I have a new one, protect a going concern, a viable business. I have another one, save jobs. Another one, protect the local economy. So when you look at Bahrain, you look at France and their recent reorganization laws, these are exactly what they're saying. These are their objectives now for the policy. But what you need to do is figure out, is that a viable business? Is it a going concern? Because you don't want to push a non-viable business into reorganization. So these are the set of questions from Ibn Ashur that I look at. Then I took a very simple set of principles. Niazi offers 13 interpretations of Ibn Ashur, of Shatibi. Stronger interest prevails, debt contract is stronger. Public interest comes before private. Reorganization is a public interest. Defined interest becomes before probable. This is where things are really challenging. If I allow the secured creditors to destroy a company and close it, it's certain that we'll lose certain benefits to a wider economy. So now, is the contract stronger than the public interest? So that's a question that I ask and look at addressing. And then just I've put that through in a table from Ibn Ashur, looking at, are we going to come out with a series of outcomes that are transparent, equitable, durable, sustainable, and marketable. And when I talk about the going concern, I say marketable, is it able to trade in the market? And so these are tools that I've been deriving to try to analyze and ask questions about the modern process of reorganization. And then just a quick summary, reorganization should result in preservation of community wealth, reduction of harm. Why am I asking these questions again? Because they're not asked historically in fiqh. So there's no classical text that understands a going concern, a legal person, and its rescue, or not. And so this is now to try to address that, because the fact on the ground is nation states in the Islamic universe are coming up with reorganization policies and procedures. And just methodologically, it's historical comparative law, comparative fiqh, and grounded theory. So that's the way I've been approaching it. All right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abdul Qadir, for an insightful presentation. Now I invite the panel to share their feedback. Dr. Mehmet.
Well, it's difficult to to comment on Abdul Qadir's work. He has immense experience in the field, and it's exciting to see his work in terms of being part of a PhD process. The only issue, and this is my ongoing issue, it's nothing to do with your research, but just want to pick up your mind. Why do we want to impose maqasid on a secular law? Ontological differences is very much obvious, and therefore aren't we going into the same problem of institutional logic problem? One is emanating from a particular ontology, the other, the secular law, is based on a particular ontology and conflicting institutional logics. But that's my ongoing problem with Islamic finance as well.
That's why there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So the Kingdom of Bahrain, now Saudi Arabia, and now the UAE, have all introduced into what are allegedly Sharia states at different layers, different levels, aligned with or in conflict with Sharia. And so my starting point is I have no idea.
Okay.
My finishing point, I have an idea.
Okay, I assume so. With your experience, I know that you have that. But again, wouldn't it bring us to this ongoing problem we have been discussing in Islamic finance, how Islamic finance is Islamic, and therefore, aren't we taking the same problem to the legal aspect by bringing some Islamic, the compliancy through Maqasid al-Sharia? Again, I'm picking up your mind.
So I think this is an issue which is first raised by Sanhori before the Egyptian legal expert, before the time of Islamic finance, in which Sanhori says, we can't in a modern state go by an uncodified system, and the European codes are giving us a tool to work with for codification. I'll take the non-repugnant areas out of European law and let Sharia be the decider for the rest. And so we're in that living framework in Bahrain, in UAE, to a lesser degree Saudi Arabia.
Okay, the realistic approach.
Yes.
Okay. The other issue, again, they said ongoing, is nothing to do particularly with your research, but I'm struggling. I'm culprit in this as well, doing Maqasid al-Sharia, looking at the evaluation of Islamic banks. Okay, but the essential problem, the ontological problem, Maqasid is for individuals. How are we translating the Maqasid, the Maqasid that has been developed for individuals, expecting corporations, and in this case, a country, to be Islamic, which is constitutionally as well as ontologically is not?
So I would give you a recommendation to look at the policy description paper given by the Central Bank of Malaysia for their recent Haja and Dorora programs, which is fundamentally a Maqasid approach. And what they're saying is effectively, we are a state, which is a Shafi'i state, that has allowed legal persons. Now that we've allowed legal persons, how does fiqh approach apply to them in certain situations? And I think that's exactly where I think I'm dealing.
Yes, Thomas, I like your approach, but I have some additional also discussion and the thoughts. So we know that in the post-colonial period, the Islamic law became dormant in the public space, and it was primarily applied in the private and the mosque, and there was no restriction. Even with colonial power, we didn't find any issues with that. But what is becoming quite obvious to me, that development of the jurisprudence that we have seen from the past, it was based on the two fundamental pillars, in kunta naqil and fasiha. So the chain of authenticity was the driving force of creation of the knowledge, and that's how we know that Quran and Sunnah was transmitted to us. But then the second part was in kunta muddiyan fa dalil. So we were looking into the what is the evidence, and in the past was primarily either correlation, dilalatul iltizam, or qiyas, analogy, which defined the development which you are referring to, Ibn Ashur and others. Their knowledge is based on that. But now, in the modern times, we have different tools that are emerged as a result of the technological and other developments. Now, their incorporation in whether it's a legal system or economics is quite challenging. So let's take, for example, statistical evidences, R square. What value gives as evidence within the Sharia discourse? I know what gives me mutawatir, Quran or Hadith, exactly the point, but what about something of modern times? Or what if we have a consensus of legal expert on something? Does that create the evidence or not? So I think these are one of the issues in the methodological disruption that happened from the past, and we are trying to bridging by constantly consolidating the past within the modern techniques and the tools, and hence that creates the dichotomy that the wisdom of the past, which we have it, was continuation, but then due to the disruption, it does not perpetuate itself in the modern times, and hence we have an issue here. And I would love to see, as a result of your research, whether it's Bahrain or Qatar, doesn't matter, any Muslim state, whether we can have a methodological discourse to fill that gap which we are constantly trying to cover with different ideological or non-ideological approaches.
Okay, so I want to thank you first for allowing me to cite my professor twice, my supervisor twice. So one of the things that Jonathan Erkenbrack's my supervisor, has pointed out in his first book is that the formalization of Islamic finance brings back Islamic law into the public space. And in specifically, when you come to Bahrain, what the role that Islamic finance has done is now it's formalized through the imposition of AOFI standards on Bahraini financial institutions. So now you start to see AOFI, which follows that traditional methodology, is now formalized into the Bahraini legal system indirectly through Central Bank of Bahrain regulation. The second element, which Erkenbrack and Hosseini and the Greek guy, I forgot his name, say in their new book that came out this summer, is if you look at most of the Arab codes, most of the Arab civil codes, in fact, the company code is verbatim in definition of business contract types, or sorry, not the company code, the contract code, and the forms of business contracts is verbatim straight from the local Sharia that was practiced before the national nation state was created. So if you go to Bahrain and you pick up the contract law, you could put it into any book you want by a Maliki scholar, as Bahrain is a Maliki country.
Thanks, Abdul Qadir, for the interesting presentation. I'm not going to jump what the two estimated professors said, especially Professor Mohammed, about the maqasid al-Sharia. Well, for me personally, I'm going to be quite nervous because everyone going to look at it differently, maqasid al-Sharia. So, and because it's on the individual level. So, and this is going to be an ongoing conflict or dispute between all the different financial institutions or individuals, customers, or whatever. And even like lots of credit rating agencies, when they assess the financial health of the Islamic financial institutions, they always conclude their remarks with, this is only financial perspective. We are not considering any Sharia admin things or whatever. So my question to you, have you thought of probably developing a benchmark to measure the maqasid al-Sharia or like different maqasid al-Sharia? I know like there are different, maybe there are different schools to look at maqasid al-Sharia, but have you thought of developing a maqasid al-Sharia like index or different benchmark to measure it from different perspective? Because, you know, Islamic finance in Iran is different from the Gulf and from Malaysia, and we got different committee and different Sharia boards in there. So this is probably going to minimize the, you know, the vague area in here, and we can look at it as academic from better perspective.
Thank you very much. Did you have more?
Yes, thanks. No.
So I think this is a really interesting question, and I'll give it two really totally disconnected answers. The first answer is, if you look at my work, I think it's effectively the Maqasid al-Sharia Index for insolvency law. Why does it matter? Well, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain have reorganization laws. That leaves all the remaining members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation without. So that now gives them the benchmark to analyze those principles as they think about their states. So that's that side. Central Bank of Malaysia, and Dr. Ziad Mahmood is here so he can tell better than me, has developed a Maqasid index for takaful entities. So I think this sort of thing is percolating across industries today. Without wishing to disrespect anybody, I've long said that things are cooked in Malaysia and eaten somewhere else. So I think we'll see that sort of index work spread.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abdul Qadir. Our next presenter on the same topic is Sister Farah Muhammad from SOAS, University of London. Please, sister.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, which one? Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So my topic of discussion today is about the integration of a just environmental framework in Islamic commercial and financial law. So the first question is always, why is this relevant? So the environmental crisis has damaged the ecosystem and endangered the livelihoods and social well-being of millions of people. The commercial and financial sectors, long regarded as drivers of economic growth, are now widely acknowledged to be crucial to both this problem and also its solution. commerce and finance direct capital flows, shape economic activity, and influence resource allocation, making them key participants to the transition to a more sustainable environment. Islamic law places high value on environmental responsibility. It sees humans as stewards of the earth, responsible for its care and preservation. Islamic jurisprudence emphasizes principles such as public good, not creating harm, and justice, all of which must be applied to environmental concerns. In the Islamic thought, the natural world is seen as a manifestation of divine creation. Protecting it is a moral obligation on the part of humanity. Historically, Islamic civilizations were renowned for their understanding of environmental care. Early Islamic cities had complex water management systems, agricultural techniques, and urban design tactics, demonstrating a recognition of the necessity to coexist with nature. And the first Islamic environmental tools and initiatives were regarded as traditional or cultural activities, and these practices evolved into legal instruments, influencing the perspectives of individuals and society at that time. And it was this style of lawmaking that demonstrates how socio-historical issues and events shaped the development of environmental ethics. And it gives context for how environmental ideas and instruments were developed and applied to address environmental issues at that time. Islamic commercial and financial laws governing ownership, usage, distribution, accountability, and risk provide a theoretical, moral, and legal framework for addressing environmental stewardship, social equality, and also economic stability. And this is more so important nowadays with the advancing technology, the need to reach out to different sectors of society and far-reaching geographical areas, and also the necessity to balance the roles of market forces such as the transnational businesses, states, and specialized non-state actors. And so Islamic commercial and financial law must not only adapt, but also evolve swiftly in order to keep up with the growing and changing environmental concerns. Importantly, it needs to play a crucial role in future and further lawmaking efforts. Some key themes: understanding the origins of Islamic environmental ethics is crucial for identifying an entry point for development and reform in Islamic law. There are some basic principles relating to this, which are by no means exhaustive. One, the interdependence of all creation, which promotes an awareness of environmental impact. Number two, the theme of stewardship. This fosters justice among all members of society, including future generations. The principle of balance promotes a moderate approach representing a broader concept of sustainability. And there's a prohibition of wasteful behavior in all aspects of life, which is seen as an injustice and a violation of natural equilibrium. So one of the methods used to fulfill the objectives of Islamic law is the identification and application of Islamic instruments and structures to commercial and financial activity. And so understanding the fundamental principles of these structures and instruments is necessary because the construction of an environmental framework requires authentic sources to support its legitimacy. So some core principles that underpin this, and which again is by no means supposed to be exhaustive, is one, the prohibition of unjust enrichment, the avoidance of uncertainty, and the rules on public policy. And notably, these structures and instruments can be enhanced and developed as long as they adhere to Islamic law principles and objectives. So understanding these concepts is critical in order to utilize and benefit from its underlying structural features. Further, these structures and instruments have varied environmental implications in terms of risk acceptance, liability, and maturity. So these ethics, instruments and structures lead to several core concepts, environmental core concepts in Islamic law. Sustainability is the concept that encourages humankind to ensure that its interactions with nature does not compromise its and the environment's ability to sustain itself. Rights. Islamic law acknowledges that all humankind has rights and that the environment as well has rights. And justice. Justice is a key component in Islamic beliefs. Humans need to be just in their activities and also in their transactions. Now, the concepts of sustainability, rights, and justice all must be viewed as complementary forces in the same struggles. So with this backdrop, there needs to be a broader framework, that environmental sustainability while balancing economic development. And this incorporates a longer-term perspective into the system, ensuring that any development considers environmental concerns. This is in line with the objectives of Islamic law, which protects life, property, intellect, lineage, and faith. Environmental protection is directly tied to these objectives. For example, it ensures the preservation of the natural resources on which humankind and human life depends. There's promotion of public interest, and there's the promotion of ensuring that there's equitable access to resources. And the intersection between the two is the lens of justice. So justice is important because it responds to concerns about the maqasid al-Sharia and environmental protection in commercial and financial activity. It prioritizes the environment. It responds and addresses the needs of the marginalized and often ignored. And these includes groups that explicitly require policies and decision-making to take into account the trade-offs between human rights, environmental interests, and economic development. It disassociates from dominant discourses such as unfair treatment, favoring wealthier individuals, society, and states, and it moves towards more pressing social issues existing between different categories of individuals and sectors of society. And there's a focus beyond the individual to non-individuals, and there's also a link to grassroots environmental justice movements. As such, justice becomes a lens to address inequalities, uncertainty, and unjust enrichment. It demonstrates that commercial and financial activities are linked to social, cultural, economic, and political conflicts when dealing with environmental challenges. And recognizing justice in particular ensures that resources, risks, responsibilities are developed and allocated in an equitable manner. And it's this intersection is where rationales for action is found. So Islamic environmental justice is the equitable treatment and meaningful participation of all stakeholders in environmental decision-making. It's a societal and global theme that offers a way to understand environmental considerations and environmentalism in a just and sustainable way. And it provides the potential to develop and enforce environmental standards. There's some key concepts, which I will quickly run through. It promotes fair and balanced rights and duties for individuals and society. And this equilibrium is founded on the objectives of Islamic law to protect fundamental human rights and environmental concerns. The emphasis is on each individual's duty to uphold their obligations, such as giving alms, charity, and acting fairly in their interactions, while society and government, on the other hand, is required to preserve a supportive and equitable social and economic system and environment. So the dual nature of these rights and duties attempt to ensure that individuals contribute to the common good and the environment, while society and rulers provide the infrastructure that provides individual well-being and a sustainable environment. It encourages proactive and voluntary activities, which are captured in a profit and loss sharing structure. And this again upholds equity and justice in an individual's activity by taking into account contribution, involvement, and effort, while addressing the need to preserve and allocate returns and losses fairly and legitimately. It exhibits risk and responsibility elements by placing individuals and society in positions of stewardship and leadership. It advocates for a multifaceted fiduciary stakeholder approach that addresses each stakeholder's rights and duties in accordance with their level of involvement and capacity. And consequently, the stakeholders will not have equal rights and responsibilities, and addressing this is actually considered a moral responsibility. So in all this, justice critically serves as a reminder that environmental issues in a commercial and financial system is inextricably linked to socio-economic targets and indicators. The application. So there are many examples, but in summary, suffice to say that by integrating environmental justice in Islamic and commercial financial law, it can lead to a meaningful discourse that can be held within the economy. I can go through this during questions and answers if anybody's interested. But moving along, so this discussion is actually approached from a multidisciplinary perspective because there are numerous internal and external conflicts which defy straightforward legal categorization. So both Islamic commercial law paired with environmental issues pose a challenge to the traditional legal order from a lawmaking perspective, from an administrative perspective, and also from an adjudicative perspective. And as a result, it's critical to comparatively analyze Islamic commercial and financial law and its basis in private law, and environmental law and its basis in public international law. Then understanding this will allow for a more transparent interpretation of the many instruments, principles, and structures that can be used to implement environmental considerations in Islamic law, address potential problems, and realize conceptual structures beneficial to the environment and economy. It is a comparative methodology that has rule-making capacities to influence compliance. Transnational laws allow for a good understanding of this and provides the legal space capable of considering all these various interests and concerns. And to conclude, I'll just say that the implementation of an Islamic environmental framework necessitates a rigorous multidisciplinary approach that needs to coordinate across different legal systems and societal structures. By combining the strengths of all these types of laws, this methodology provides a comprehensive, just, and ethical approach to address environmental concerns while still adhering to Islamic law and objectives. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Safara, for a wonderful presentation. Now I invite the panel to share their feedback.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm still not sure, is it like this is completed research or just you proposing the research? Because there's no very clear research question to me. And, like as an academic research, I'm expecting to see like the base theory of your research, which is not quite clear for me. Would you please, like in 1 minute, how do you summarize it? Like, what's your research question exactly? How did you address this question, your methodology, and what's the base theory for this research?
So the question is whether there is room for integration of an Islamic environmental framework within Islamic commercial and financial law, and what are the problems, especially from a legal perspective. Because we've looked at environmental issues very generally and many times in many Islamic finance sessions regarding this topic. But there's the question of how do we actually implement it? How do we actually put it in terms of a legal process? The lawmaking session, the administrative part, and the adjudication part. How do we actually make it how do we actually make people comply with it? And so from a justice perspective, and I did not go into too detail about that, but if you look at it from an international environmental law perspective, which I think there hasn't been a lot of research on that, there's different ways to actually make it more formalized for compliance. So justice can be seen in various ways. There are different concepts of justice as well, which is part of the research as well. And each type of justice has varied environmental and social outcomes, and that's part of the framework.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Farah, I have a major concern about your research here. So you are looking into concept of right and how that apply to environment. Now we know that theoretically we study the concept of right within the concept, not right, the concept of the balance between environmental, social, and other elements, the whole agenda of sustainable development within the concept of mizan, Now, this is quite well established word, even in Arabic, in Quranic primary resources, ontology. It says whole surah of Rahman is about that, how you are creating the balance between the sides, whether in the society, whether in the material wealth, and so on. So it's all about, even the concept of iqtisad comes from the word of caste, which creates balance between the two extremes. Either you go to the poverty or extravagant, that's why israf is prohibited, but also the faqr, which is the poverty, is almost to be the kufr or disbelief. But now when it comes to rights, which you are trying to put in the legal framework, right is a modernist or very much enlightening theory. It doesn't come from Islam. Islam works on the privilege basis, and Professor Mehmet will correct me on that. This is where we are coming, because most of being here in the Baraka Forum, is it your right or privilege, guys? It's a privilege. So these are the way, and therefore when you are entering into the legal, also Sharia issues, here we are coming to the whether something is acceptable or unacceptable, but many things doesn't fall black and white, very much dichomatically, but it will more require thinking within the framework of Islamic old jurisprudence. Something could be very much fard, because you need to mandate things, because people will not fix it voluntarily. Yes, that's where it comes fard. Then also at the same time will come haram, to ban something, because people will not do it voluntarily. And then we have a range of things. So you're going to the wajib, you can go to mustahab, mubah, and then you're coming to the very much green area, which is left to the people how much they want to function. But then also you have makruh, tahrim, and tanzih, and to come to the harm. So you have a whole spectrum to move around to fix what you are talking about it, but not within the definitely concept of right, because it's more about privilege.
So thank you, Professor. I think there's a lot of emphasis on rights, but I think my topic was emphasized actually on justice. But I completely take your points, and there's a lot of controversial and differences and conflicts within this topic, very much so. And I think you've touched on one, which is very large, but there's also others, many others as well. And I think my topic is not concentrated so much on the rights, but more on probably justice, and also just trying to create this legal theory, a conceptual framework formed based on justice as a start. There's a lot more work, definitely, that needs to be done in this space. A lot of specific, tiny work, more detailed work as well. So thank you so much for your comment. But and it's definitely taken into account. Sorry, I can't hear.
Okay, thank you for, it's
You're
good to
welcome.
see you here. I didn't know that you were doing PhD.
Quietly
So
doing
it's exciting.
PhD.
2 years ago, I think it was in the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies, in the same panel together, we were sitting together. We both had in our presentation, in addition to greenwashing, we had the maqasid washing.
Maqasid.
So that is what's happening. Just to pick up, I understand that you're approaching from justice perspective, which is totally significant, of course. But that justice, of course, as Aliyah was identifying, how to articulate that justice, then it comes to whether right-based justice, whether privilege-based justice. Because we are working within the Islamic framework. In other words, whether we are doing a very realistic PhD or research, or at the same time, whether we want to constitute an Islamic benchmark model, how relevant to the rest of the world doesn't matter, and therefore the distinctions. I can see that, of course, with the practice, we are in the real life, and therefore the right comes very much determining your understanding of justice. And that's not a criticism, just different approaches. But I thought developing an Islamic benchmark model first, and based on the Tawhidi understanding, because through the Tawhid we can generate justice, because Tawhid then will tell us that the complementarities we complement environment complements society, and etc., because that directly requires the whole idea that when the decision making is made, whether legal, whether financial, that the interests of all the stakeholders have to be taken into account, because at the end of the day, the value theory would suggest that everything is valuable because Allah created.
Yeah.
Okay, so therefore that brings the whole privilege idea to essentialize why justice is important. And hence different ontological positioning, it is important here. The other issue, again, the ongoing Maqasid debate. And now the Ghazalian debate is, Ghazalian Maqasid is exciting, but again, in responding such as the environmental issues is very short. And therefore, Auda, in modern times, but historically as well others, but Islamic economists such as Chopra as well as Siddiqui came up suggesting that, look, this Ghazalian framework is not responding to the public policy related areas, because this is very much individual wealth, individual self, and etc. And therefore, they were referring that Ibn Qayyimian approach, which considers not restricted maqasid categories, but depending on the time of the society and the realities of the society, we can develop public policy out of maqasid. So it should not be limited. And therefore, Auda in recent years is looking into how to expand that and to provide, for instance, a rationale why environment has to be an essential part and to be recognized in the initial equation, not as an additional moderating value, but as an essential in the initial equation should be, I think, moving from right-based justice to privilege-based justice as a benchmark model, and then considering maqasid. And I think we should not be, we should be confident to be able to move from the imposed very traditional understanding, because Auda as well is using very different forms of maqasid, looking into such maqasid. Environmental concerns and issues to the debate, to the legal form will be useful. And also Ghazali would say that it's a protection, but Chopra would say that, well, in order to protect, you have to be at the zenith of it so that you can, but because we are in the development process, and in order to capture that development, he came up with the word invigoration. Have to develop it rather than protect, because we cannot protect the current environmental state. Is already corrupted, unfortunately. So how we can invigorate, how we can develop that to reach to its rububiyyah, because Allah created everything to reach to their perfection. So I think a benchmark model, I understand that the reality is very much there, as Central Bank of Malaysia or the Securities Commission, they have to deal. But I think we can go one step backward and look at the issues, what could have been the Islamic model. Okay, and that will be useful. Just the last one, I don't know whether have you seen Qardawi's Environmental Ethics translated by ISRA, last year published. That could be a good source as well to start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Carry on, inshallah.
Thank
you.
So, is that just quickly in response? Very excellent comments, especially from an economic perspective, I think. So that actually is very helpful, because this is a multidisciplinary approach, and looking at it from a larger economic perspective is very helpful. The research is also, it is focused a lot on the legal perspective, from a legal point of view, but putting this in an economic perspective is very helpful. So thank you very much for your comments.
Now we will move to the second topic, which is Islamic socio-economics concept in sustainability and ESG. I invite Sister Sirli Andini Botrifio from University of Dundee to deliver her presentation. Please, Sister.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Robi Sroli Saudari Waisiri Amri Wahlul Tata Milisani Afkau Koli. So everyone, I know that you guys are already like so sleepy and full after having lunch, but I will try to make you feel excited because I have quite loud voice, I think. So I'm gonna take you to my PhD journey, why I'm doing this, what makes me do this, and so on. My title today is Income Generating Waqf for Poverty Alleviation, and I'm using a case study in Central Java, Indonesia. So it's not specifically the whole country, but I'm focusing on a specific part of Central Java. So why I started this PhD? It was actually because of the economic crisis of 2020, which caused by COVID outbreak. So this leads to a significant amount of unemployment, decreasing value of currency, investment failure in exports and imports, which contributes to poverty in long term. But actually, it's more than that. We also experience like food scarcity and so on. Countries around the world applying fiscal policy as a response to the COVID-19. The policy itself involves in a long term of manageable debt. And one of the fiscal policy that is applied all across the world is always the implication of tax. And it's impossible to make it lower. It's always gonna go higher and higher. And this is the reason why. Tax affects all social income. This is all cases in around the world. First, here, there's this direct taxes. This affects richer households through direct taxes, for instance, land and building tax, because they will buy more expensive property, if that makes sense. And then income tax, because their income threshold is obviously higher than average people. And then the state or regional taxes. And there's also indirect taxes. This gives more burden to the poorer households than the higher households. This is due to the value-added tax. For example, if you guys go to a coffee shop, no matter where you're in all income status, but if you guys go to a coffee shop, the tax that is applied there, it's all the same, right? And then I will go straight to the fiscal policy. The implication of fiscal policy may benefit a country to its distributed to health, education, public services, public welfare, and areas of growth. However, fiscal policy actually affects more the lower income households. You guys can check about the research. So in order for a country to prosper, they need help from the citizen, which is they need to implement tax. But during that time, it was a really, really hard crisis. Okay, some country might not gonna charge you during that time, but after COVID, the country tried to recover themselves from the suffering after COVID period, that is our period right now, the bills and so on, it's all increasing, which is another solution. It's another problem and always a loophole of problems. These are my research questions. The first one, how does the pre-modern Waqf differentiate with the modern Waqf? This is very important because we actually have shifted from so many generations from the Prophet era until nowadays era. So each Khalifa and each Sahaba as well, they also implement Waqf in different models. So that's why it's important to understand the difference between models per era as well. And the second one is how to create a social awareness of Waqf, how to redesign Waqf policy to meet the current needs of social welfare, because the problems in the current economics is always changing, so we have to be ready to meet the social needs at the moment. Now, why shifting toward Islamic economics tool in implementing Waqf in fiscal policy from the prevailing conventional perspectives? Here, I would say in a short answer, while I adore so much the conventional economics because a lot of implication in Islamic bankings and Islamic finance, we're still learning so much from the conventional banking. But there's also so many disadvantages when we actually applying the conventional banking. So I would like to introduce it again to the public, to the society, to the government that let's come back to the ruling Islamic teaching because it's our identity. So these are the research objectives, aims to explore the types of Waqf in the past and present, as I mentioned, propose suitable model of Waqf in addressing current needs, exploring the donors' understanding and knowledge in Waqf. This is important because we need to understand what the donors is actually wanting and needing and what their preference likes when it comes to donating in Waqf. And this also to suggest fiscal policy in Waqf integration, which act as a tax alternative. This is very important. This is why, because in Indonesia, we acknowledge the donation of zakat and sadaqah that coming from the organization that's acknowledged or registered by the government. But when it comes to Waqf, it's actually not yet recognized. The government might give you a tax reduction if you register your land as a hiba, but we need a specific acknowledgement, we need a specific policy when it comes to Waqf. That's why people were actually avoiding to not registering that to the government, which is not good. Another problems again. My research contributions to deliver compromising solution for the current social economic issue, propose a suitable solution for policymakers and scholars, reintroducing an active income generating Waqf to the society, I will go further later, and to provide a comprehensive understanding of a different Waqf system for the Ummah. This is my research gaps. So, in the Islamic history, the traditional Waqf has actually shifted from poverty alleviation to wealth protection. This is an example from the Ottoman Empire. So, during the Ottoman Empire, many sultanate was actually trying to protect their wealth. They will, okay, I will donate Waqf. But now when we're coming to the Islamic objectives, we know that inamal a'malu binniyah. So when you are wanting to donate something, but then your intention is actually to avoid tax, will you receive good deeds from Allah? I'll give that questions to all of you to think about. So, despite its important feature to welfare, Waqf priorities need to be reformed in order to meet the current needs of the society without neglecting the principles. Most Waqf fund in the society is non-revenue generating assets. The current Islamic scholars are encouraging for Waqf to be movable. If I ask all of you, what is the country in the world that has most masjid? What are your guesses? Indonesia, that's correct. So in Indonesia, we have thousands of masjids everywhere. You will hear azan everywhere. That's amazing. That's also supporting the growth of Islam in Indonesia. But that's also a problem because people just keep on donating and masjid again. We don't need more masjids. We need people to pay attention to how to maintain masjid. We need air conditioner because in Indonesia it's like scorching hot, right? We need people to clean the masjid. We need to do the laundry for the prayer for women, and we need to clean the carpet and so on. So we need money. We need money to maintain. We don't need any more donation in fixed assets such as masjid or lands. Potential of Waqf Indonesia may reach up to 180 trillion Indonesian rupiah. That's said by the Office of National Waqf Indonesia. And the total amount Waqf collected only 21.9%. And the biggest problem is the lack of awareness in the society. So I'm now in the step of already collecting my questionnaire, but I haven't really yet processed it. But here there's a correlation. Because it's non-revenue generating Waqf, and in my questions, I asked, how familiar are you guys with the different types of Waqf? And I will put like family Waqf, I will put like religious Waqf, I will productive Waqf, and so on. And 62% people, they're actually answering that they are familiar with religious Waqf, which is for building masjid, building madrasah, or institution. But when it comes to generating Waqf, only 8%. So, like, how is it gonna solve the problem if people are not even aware that those productive Waqf is actually existing? So, this is the literature review. Poverty is incapability is in health, education, hunger, low income, poor work quality, social status, lack of security, and so on. The correlation with Waqf is that if we implement Waqf, the benefits of Waqf is going to be distributed in various sectors, which mainly for public services. So it's not just alleviating poverty, but it's also going to improve the education system. It's going to help the health sector as well. And for example, if someone is donating money to a productive Waqf, then the money from Waqf, they will build a school, and then if there's a school, then there's going to be jobs, then people are going to have like a good future, good career, and so on. The origin of Waqf, I'm sure all of you guys already know about this one. So I will just go to this. The conceptual framework of charitable giving. I'm using the charitable giving because Waqf is considered as altruism behavior or pro-social behavior in Islamic finance. So this goes in public benefits and private benefits. In public benefits, it increases altruism, improving the quality of society, increase trust in charitable organization, gives like social benefits as well, and contribute to the receiver happiness. And this is interesting because when I was presenting this to most of conventional scholars, they will say this: why are you asking money to people to donate while they're actually poor? And I feel like it's kind of hard to explain to them, but I would say this. In Indonesia, people are more scared to God than to the government. So because they're scared to God, they're actually easy for our Indonesian people to volunteer, to pay, or to donate, rather than to pay tax. They will try as hard as they can to avoid tax, but when it comes to charitable donation, it's very easy to get their donation. That's why Waqf in Indonesia is very good. And for private benefits for individual, it's help in a fiscal incentive or wealth protection, but also tax avoidance somehow. So it's also increased the self-esteem, reduce the guilt of not practicing good deeds, and increase social status and reputation as well. These are the types of Waqf. I'm sure all of you guys are familiar because I don't have much time. In Indonesia, the Waqf institutions are private and government-owned organizations. And I want to say this is a very important thing because some of you guys are not coming from the Islamic finance background. So when I was very early studying economics, I would say the conventional economics, their aims is actually for profit maximization or profit generation. And I was also taught that in conventional economics, natural resources are limited, which is actually connected to the social development goals. But when we're learning Islamic economics, it's actually telling you the opposite. So the aims, is it for profit? No, it's to help others while acquiring profit. And then secondly, if it comes to Allah, when it comes to Islam, do you guys believe that Allah not give us enough resources? I don't believe that. Resources in the world are massive, it's abundant. But how to distribute it? Because the problem is we cannot distribute it, we cannot give it because, political differences and conflicts and so on. But again, natural resources are not limited. Allah has given us such an abundance resources. So the important things for, maybe at least for you guys to think about for today, I want you guys to have a mindset that natural resources are unlimited, but we have to take care of it because we're responsible. I think that would be all, or should I give a little bit? Okay, just conclusion. The challenges probably. So the challenges in Indonesia or most of the countries that it comes to generating Waqf, first is again the awareness, because not a lot of people actually understand the benefit of Waqf, that you can use this Waqf money for many things. In Indonesia, we use plenty already said railways and so on, but actually it's not just that. Even as simple as helping people with impairments and disability, we also using money for Waqf, and for a scholarship for us to study abroad and so on, we're also using Waqf money. So in Indonesia, we already expand Waqf in very different models and many models. And again, the challenges is the awareness. So it's one of my responsibility as a researcher to educate everyone to share this problem as well, and for the government to understand that what we need to do to redesign the policy and so on. And what I want the government, Indonesian government, to do is to acknowledge the Waqf system, for it to be included in the self-assessment system, because if it's included in the self-assessment system, then the individual will pay less tax. Does that make sense? So I think that's everything. Thank you so much.
MashaAllah. Thank you, sister, for insightful presentation. Our panel, to start with Professor Ali. I am asking you, are you the supervisor? So we'll start with...
Yeah, but, thank you, Putri. It's an exciting area, but
Thank you.
just a few perhaps more fundamental issues. I know in Indonesia as well as in many Muslim countries, but particularly Indonesia, Malaysia, a lot of studies going on around Waqf.
Yes.
And the importance of Waqf, donations to Waqf and all that. That's exciting to see how society can mobilize resources to help each other. But at the same time, it doesn't tackle the fundamental question. This is important because we are encouraging people now to donate to Waqf.
Yes.
But the origin of Waqf, when we look at, and historically as well, there's a whole governance issue. In Muslim societies, Muslims were part of the relationship between ordinary individual Muslims and the existing structure, political structure, was being a subject. And being a subject did not involve the Sultan making the provisions, because that wasn't the case.
Yes.
So hence, it had to be organized within the civil society.
Yeah.
Therefore, Waqf emerged to protect civil society and ordinary people on the streets. But now we have entirely different political structure. We are citizens. As you mentioned, the taxes.
Yeah.
We pay taxes. So rather than pressurizing the nation state, delivering its promise being a citizenship relationship, because we give tax and we would expect. It seems that we are moderating the responsibilities of the states by encouraging people to give to the Waqf. Rather than asking the question, yes, the usual question, yes, poor is poor, we have to help, but we have to ask the question, why poor is poor?
Yeah.
The resource accessibility problem. So that brings the whole political economy problem in the Waqf studies. I know you are not tackling that part, but I think in your rationalization, you have to come up to justify that, because I feel that with all these Waqf studies, we are lifting the burden from the state to the society, and that's not right.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned that if you donate, certain tax exemption can be possible.
Yeah.
But again, the responsibility, the citizenship responsibility, as compared to the being a subject in the past, that's a huge political economic difference.
Yeah.
So that's something that we have to consider.
Yeah.
So the Waqf structure. And also, in your research, of course, you are looking at the giving behavior.
Yes.
Okay.
Altruism behavior, yeah.
On the giving behavior, you would expect that there are quite a number of studies available.
Yeah.
So your particular contribution here, since you are here in the UK, your particular contribution, what could be the difference? Because when you identify the expected consequences, it's very secular consequences that you have identified in your list.
Yeah, in the list, yes.
So that does not bring something additional or something exceptionally new to the debate, showing that being an Islamic, being a Muslim and giving for an Islamic cause, that's not coming up.
Yes.
So that's something that perhaps as a contribution compared to other studies, perhaps you can come up with different benchmark as a consequence.
Yes, I agree.
Since you are here and doing this research, you have to be more innovative in terms of bringing at least the model. Bring that out would be very much useful. At least provide that. Otherwise, plenty of such studies available. Just Google, it's hundreds of those giving behavior type of studies using the SMEs and etc. as a methodology available. Just wanted to bring to your attention. But the larger political economic issues that I really like to see in your research to touch upon, and that because has consequences. When you ask people giving for Waqf, the whole governance system of Waqf changes, because in the past mainly it was very much individual donating his or her wealth to a particular Waqf, but now you're getting stakeholders contributing to Waqf, so different structures as well. And so those are important issues that I wanted to bring into, but on the practical level, I think your model has to be revised. Perhaps, I don't know, again, I'm a culprit in that, but perhaps a Maqasidi approach or something would be useful to look into that. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So I would like to respond to Prof. Mehmet. First of all, I really appreciate the suggestion. I totally agree with you from the political perspective, because I was actually, when I'm doing a lot of readings comparing from the traditional Waqf to the current Waqf, there's so many subjective and practicality that's very different, that's shifted and also gone at the moment. So I need to reintroduce that thing again, just for the community, because when on my survey questionnaire, I'm asking people if they truly understand or not, because a lot of people, they truly don't understand. A lot of people are just understanding from the surface only. So my job to doing, especially to go deeper in the political approach, is still a very big issue, and I think I will go further and further, and maybe going to be my future aims after this one. And for the second one, which was about the very conventional economics, I actually have some of the information of the religious behavior, but I don't know why it's not in my slides. I'm sending 2 different slides. So in my conceptual framework, it's not just about the charitable giving, but first it goes with the ontology of Islamic behavior, the Islamic pillars, and then the responsibility of Muslim to understand adalah ihsan and so on. And then after that, it will go to the sustaining welfare to the public. But it doesn't stop to sustaining welfare, because if I stop to the sustaining welfare, it's just, again, conventional economics. So after that, I go further into the affirmation religious behavior. That is also on my questionnaire. And on the affirmation religious behavior sections, is actually, I receive plenty, like 90%. The respondents actually agree with the statement, or asking that after they're donating money, they feel that their faith actually increased, that they also feel like happy, and they also feel that they're closer to Allah, and so on. So it's not just a conventional perspective that I'm trying to get and deep down to the respondents, but it's also, I want to understand that if you guys truly understand this is such an Islamic finance tool, not just an altruism behavior. So I think that what I can respond for now, but thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Very interesting presentation. I like
Thank
the
you.
topic very well.
Thank you.
Just two couple of points, which is you might consider in your research. Which is the first one, in order to convince the local policy, like the local government or the policymakers' decisions, you have to show the financial implication, the economic implication of the model you are developing, in order to convince them to make that story happen.
Yes.
And the second thing, which is I like when you said that the Waqf model will address the current needs. I'm not sure when you develop that model. Well, I would like to see the structure of it and to compare it with the current tax model. Is it going to be flexible, because current needs will be different from future needs? Is that going to be like a flexibility element in it in order to, make it more approachable? But in general, very interesting, and I would like to see more about the structure when it's ready. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. In order for me to present more statistical data, I think I don't have time here, but I would like to have a discussion further with you, because I have some of the statistical data for about the problem in Indonesia, which was caused by debt keeps on increasing in the country, and also the tax implication that keeps on increasing as well. And the problem with maintaining or meeting the social needs, it's going to be something that is current at the moment, but we also have various projects that actually going for longer term goals. So if you search about the Waqf in Indonesia, for example, search barakahwaqf.id on Google, you will see on that website we have 4 main different types of Waqf. There's a productive Waqf, there's an ongoing, a disaster Waqf, and even in so there's a differentiation between the emergency one, and there's going to be a long-term one, which goes to the cash Waqf link sukuk or green energy sukuk as well. But we also, I would say we focus more in both. I cannot say we are managing both like really well, because we just started really well in 2018. So there's still some of the things that we need to make it better and change it. But I think I already like it, the system in Indonesia as well. And maybe here, just a suggestion for everyone. Like in Indonesia, we have a system of Waqf that when someone is donating money, you actually can see and track how many people who are donating, and you guys can already see like how's the progress. So it's not just like you guys donate and then that's it, and then you will get like a report or index at the end of the year. It's not like that in Indonesia. You will receive like real time information of what's happening with donations. So I think that's what the donors need, because they need transparency. just like they want to know like what is going on with my donation. They don't want to know about at the end of the day this is what happens, but they want to know the process because they want to be involved.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sister Sally. Our next presenter is Sister Shireen Mardani from University of Dundee. Please, Sister Shireen. Hello.
Hello everyone, my name is Shireen Mardani and I am a PhD student and researcher at the University of Dundee. And just before I start, I want to say that I am in the very early stages of my PhD, so go easy on me. But hopefully you can follow along my research and enjoy the topic. So, just starting with the issue of my research here. So, after the post-colonial period and after the World War, we saw the emergence of modernity very much, and the universal values became potent in the dominant discourse of economic analysis and behavioral patterns. So the world converged in one way of thinking, therefore meaning that religious and ethical concerns within certain religious groups and the conventions were left aside and divorced from economic analysis, as we know and have discussed during this conference over the past 2 days. So, however, due to this failure then of modernity, to provide satisfactory answers for many economical and financial matters, then the religious, as well as other societal-based faith movements, have started to emerge more in conversation. And this creates, I believe, a new avenue for research and understanding of behaviors of society. So in doing so, I'm hoping that my PhD or proposed research as a new discourse will give better insight and provide information into different economic policies which actually represent much better the social realities and constructs of people and societies living within the contemporary times. So the focus of my research is very much looking into the Abrahamic religions. And although this conference is fundamentally focused on Islamic finance and economics, the question was posed yesterday during one of the presentations about should we rename Islamic finance and economics? And this is quite controversial, and I can't say that I agree with a name change, but I do propose that we consider Abrahamic religions, so that's Islam, Judaism and Christianity, as one and tackle this going forward because of their historical interconnectedness, their agreement on very many values that are commonly shared and have been maintained through the centuries. So hence this approach, I'm trying to see how the moral, ethical frames of the past are constantly underpinning and defining and actually being articulated within the modern times, the modern discourses, and thus they play impact and have impact on questions and discussions regarding the socio-political sustainability issues and debate. So to do so, we require debating ideology as part of this because of the historical gap in Judaism as well as Christianity and Islam, that there is a discontinuation of creating that knowledge and innovation within those religious frameworks. So thus, in acknowledging modernity, which has taken precedence, we are constantly trying to relate religious issues and matters to either justify or reject or endorse and adopt certain modern techniques, institutions and frameworks. And therefore, with ideology as consideration a part of the discourse, it's becoming I believe, a very necessary approach to understand the diversification in behavioral patterns within religious belonging. So because of the scriptures informing the religious groups belonging to Abrahamic religion, the ontological sources, as well as the epistemological sources, are constantly prone to interpretation and different levels of understanding and adoption, as well as application within the modern times. And this was very much, I feel, a prominent discussion of yesterday's talks. We're seeing that there are variations in even the way that we do and conduct business within Islamic finance and economics. So this is the core main idea that we need to consider here. So therefore, it's very important to bring religion as well as ideological structures into economic analysis in order to provide and strengthen adequate policies and solutions, strategies, etc., to really provide or demonstrate the variation in ideological beliefs and religious understanding and adaptation. Fancy effects here, so just bear with me. Okay, so I'm proposing here, it should be 5 Shimas, it only says 4 on the slides. So in order to, or in acknowledging the Abrahamic religious communities, there are levels of adherence of the same religious groups today as a result of cultural, historical, and religious norms in the contemporary discourses of life. So in order to understand these levels, we adopted the ideological frameworks, which can help us define the level of attendance or adherence when applied to economic discourse. So what are the key factors in being and endorsing the religion, and to what extent, and in which areas and which scope? So these are very general overviews, and in my PhD, there is a much more sophisticated schema or definition of the ideologies. But for the purpose of today's presentation, I've simplified them. So we categorize as such. The first is traditionalists. So in this case, we would very much like to preserve the status quo, and we're maintaining and actively preserving the traditional values in both form and substance. And then we move on to modernists, which we know are very much inclined towards modern innovations. They're concerned with the Reformation and this catch-up period of social reality. We have secularists who do not endorse religion very much at all beyond the private space, and they will be very much advocating for the separation of politics from religious matters. We have the fundamentalists approach, which is very much concerned with the reversal of social, economic, political developments, assembling what we might be deemed as a radical version of an idealized society. And then we have postmodernists who try to take a more comprehensive approach by looking into the past, but at the same time, they are also trying to endorse and also benefit from modern innovations. So therefore, we can already notice that the level of endorsement and acceptance might vary across the religious groups or ideological positioning. And this is something very important because when you're looking into certain categories, for example, even people in the UK, we cannot say that we are religiously equal. Muslims will disagree and agree on different matters, as will the other religions. And so amongst the same religious groups, we may adhere to traditionalist ideologies, but at the same time demonstrate modernist or secularist behaviors in other matters. So this is fundamentally the issue that I'm trying to address and present. Okay. So I won't go too much detail into this, but I can discuss with you further how we have created a framework of ideology from a political economy discourse. These are also just some visual slides so you can understand. Okay, so I want to make it clear. So within the movement of these ideologies, meaning that groups will take and endorse within the platform of finance different levels of norms and the values of religion to produce the constructs, very much to understand the development of social finance, both from the syntax and semantics, and how they align to the norms of religious epistemology. And the ontological justification sources are constantly used and providing quite a clear discursive for analysis. And therefore, if we take the example of religious schools, we're constantly referred to in Islamic studies. So whether it's Sunni or Shia, etc., you can see that there are levels of adherence which help to identify which group and which elements within the construction and techniques that define the levels of adherence to ethics are very much dependent. So just to skip to my concluding slides, because we are running so far out of time. Okay, so within the financial institutions, global markets, real economy policy implications are very much influenced and affected by the different levels of ideological reasoning, whether from religious groups or from other stances. So therefore, it implies that in order to bring all of these components harmoniously to deliver the expectations so that policy can be adequate enough, we need to include ideology, and this can provide solutions for real economy to stable the global markets. And within the economic discourse, hence political economy approach, I believe that ideology very much has to be endorsed and included within its analysis for us to move forward. So with that, I'll draw my presentation to a conclusion, but happy to go into further discussion during the break. Thank you.
Thank you, Shireen. Thank you. We'll start with Prof. Mehmet in 2 minutes, please.
I know the time is an issue. This is an exciting research. I mean, in 1990s, this would have been crazily exciting topic. Because that was the time everyone was talking about the whole pluralism. But now, unfortunately, the world is going into fascism. So that's a reality. It is exciting, but we have to understand the ontological differences even within the Abrahamic tradition. Because when we look at perhaps ontologically Judaism and Islam closer, but of course, when it comes in particular Protestant Christianity, you have a lot of issues. I don't know whether have you seen the series of books published by Oxford University Press,
Yes.
Religion and Economics.
Yes.
When you look at the volume on Christianity, so all these big guys that we know in the economic scenery, they have contributed to that because the way Enlightenment philosophy generated is very much the contribution of Protestants, saving the Catholics, of course. That's important, Catholic position. And therefore, the coming to the same front with the Protestantism, which generated this capitalism that we have in front of us, then talking about values will be very much on the surface rather than a deeper meaning. But with Catholicism, Judaism, and Islam, perhaps the values that we can bring is here, despite the differences in the epistemology. But in terms of ontological similarity, there are certain things that we can appreciate. But also importantly, I think the language, you have to be careful with the language because you start with religion, you identify the responses, appreciate that, but then you turn into ideology. So these are different categories of issues. So just you have to be careful whether we are talking about religion generating an ideology. If that's the way, Abrahamic religions, they are not going to be able to come together because the articulation of ideology is very much beyond the ontology, interpretation of those ontologies. And therefore, perhaps to be on the safe side, staying on the bringing value to the market system rather than using the ideology could be a safer area for you, unless if you want to go into that debate. But I could see that that's not your debate, and therefore my suggestion, just look into that. Okay.
Thank you, Professor. Just quickly, I do agree with your points, and especially Christianity being a stick out when considering the Abrahamic religion. So this is very much a part of the literature of my PhD so far. And yes, you're right, when it comes to ideological matters as well, there is a sensitivity associated with defining religious groups by ideological categories. So Okay, no problem. Thank you, Professor. I'll speak to you later.
Yeah, sorry, it's a very interesting topic.
Thank you.
Just a quick note, you might consider Hofstede Index, National Cultural Index, which is, it might be very beneficial in your PhD because you are in early stages in that, and you can understand the behavior, and you can probably understand your research much better. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Hofstede.
had reviewed, but it didn't quite fit with the direction of my research. So I chose to use Rand's ideological or typography to decipher ideological means. But even in that, I'm told that there probably is more modern definitions that need to be considered as part of that. But thank you.
Exception, we have one question only, please.
Very loud, audible voice. Okay. I just want to say there's a very common misconception. Everyone keeps saying that in other religions such as Judaism, they don't allow interest. And the whole not charging interest is only when both parties are Jews. If one party is Jew and the other party is not a Jew, they are allowed to charge interest.
Exactly.
I just wanted to add that because
this is a valid point, but this is why I'm trying to argue that ideological stances matter, because in certain circumstances, okay, let's take Islam, there may be certain elements of a transaction in which we consider haram, okay, but then to other people in the same religious group, it's halal. It's the same situation in Judaism. Christianity, not so much, as we know we've moved with modernity, secularity, etc. So, but it's an interesting point and very, very current in my research.
Thank you, Shireen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Brother Mehmet Artuk from Durham University. Please.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm sorry to just keeping you such a late, just like a time. I know everybody's a little bit just sleepy. I think this session is gonna be a little bit just make your mind just working and try to get some new idea about the existing problems. Therefore, today I'm gonna just present one of my chapters in my PhD thesis, which is Islamic value theory. And the value theory, I will come what I mean by the value theory in the next couple of slides, but initially, and why we come up with idea of the Islamic value theory. And one of the citation from the Strafai was saying, the people do not come up with the articulating or constituting different theory because of out of curiosity. But actually when there is a need rise in the society and when there is something emerge, something unknown emerge, and then the people try to try to understand that problem by come up with different assumption and theory, okay? Therefore, what is the problem then? The problem is, we says, deterioration of the balance, the mizan on the earth, and not only on the earth level, but in the societal level as well, as 1% and 99% this discussion is taking place nowadays. And this problem is just getting lots of attention, and we have those even Nobel Prize winners also try to just take attention of our, and there might be just some problems with the existing theory construction process. So the problems in the textbook they say, okay, solo objective of the corporations is they have to maximize their profit, and we have just seen couple of presenter and speakers, they says, yes, by the board of directors and the shareholders do not happy if they just a profit is going down. And the realistic schools just focusing the shareholders governance structure, but they see if we keep going this way as within the realistic understanding, we may not just like find a world, just like find a nature at all, and the society is gonna get, when that just like the income disparity get bigger and bigger, it might just like cause some social problem as well. And therefore that they come up with that idea of sustainability development goals. And actually it was initially they were arguing that, okay, the market, when it's get efficient, everything's gonna get all right. But eventually they says, no, if you wait the market get efficient, it may not be get efficient anyway. And therefore they try to just like externally to pushing the market players to be efficient and be normative by the stakeholders approach. However, the problems with Islamic finance industry as well, they still not just like ready to take this normative approach, because they say if we follow the Fiqhi approach and legalistic approach, by definition the result's gonna be the Islamic just like by de facto. But as we have seen a couple of just like many empirical study, the Islamic finance is actually, of course, they are doing great in the financial performance. But when it's come to just like a social and environmental performance indicators, just like not that actually promising. And therefore, these papers try to just like take a substantive approach to articulate Islamic value theory. Why we have those disparity between poor and rich and getting bigger and bigger. And why we have this environmental deterioration. Actually, there should be something missing. There should be one party is getting, do not get their right. This is why the disparity is just like, you know, is getting bigger. And therefore, I articulate this value theory by using the modes of production and distribution theory, which I will explain a little bit just like in a couple of slides. And the concept of value theory, how things get their value. What are they worth, you know? And the price is the, just like, you know, simple answer, we might just like come to our minds. The price is determine their value. But actually, the price is fluctuating too much. And therefore, the value theories is a kind of a little bit more just like the principle is determining the value. If I ask you just like a simple question, what actually helped a ship to sail in the ocean, the simple answer is going to be the wind. But actually, there are some currents, and the tides also helping the ships to just like move forward and backward. And therefore, the value theory is a kind of to taking account both the wind, the market dynamics, and the currents, institutions, and the tides, just like a sociological factor as well. And it was just like a corresponding the neoclassical economic as a long-term equilibrium price, and the Marxists call it as a labor value theory. And it was in the moral economy discourse, they call it as a just price. The just price, and then when the just like the price is gonna be somewhere between just like above and beneath of the just price or long-term equilibrium price. And the idea of why I come up with this labor value theory, by the way, this is getting really good attention by the just like, you know, this new institutional economist. And they say the problems that we are actually just like facing, the problems of financialization, problems of just like environmental issue. But actually they say some parties do not get their right. This is why we are actually try to just like facing these problems. And let's see how the initial equation is actually articulated. And therefore they try to come up with says who is the maker and who is the taker of the value. And one party must get more. This is why the disparity between producer or the finance, the real economy and the financial economy is getting just like, you know, attention. Therefore, my argument's gonna be the main arguments that I'm criticizing the existing value theory to say, actually the sociological power dynamics in the sociological level, and even the Daron Acemoglu has got his Nobel Prize based on the subject, and how actually they are affecting the superstructure and knowledge creation process. And by this way, try to understand different sociology, different economic system, how based on different economic system, they come up with a different theory, different economic theories. And therefore, in the capitalist discourse, 2 minutes, that I understand the capitalists just like the owned means of production, economic just like resources. And this is why they come up with the idea of just like the idea of the capital is determining the labor, because they are actually the shareholders determine the right of the labor. And who is the labor is? They mostly define as a commodity. But in the Marxist discourse, the labor is at the center, is a kind of politics, like a parliament, some party is defending the right, representing the labor class, the other party is representing the shareholders. But we have also ecological, just like economics as well, they also defending the right of the ecology. Is the ecology in the center, the rest is getting there just like a share. But in our case, we said, okay, let's try to just like come up with a totalistic or holistic understanding of Islamic economy and try to understand and what kind of just like a value theory we are proposing. Because in existing stuff, the power dynamic in the just like sociological level is affecting. And therefore, is there any way to just like get rid of those power dynamics and try to understand something neutral, impartial? And we says actually, yes, the Islamic ontology and epistemology provide that sense of veil of ignorance, the Rovlosian veil of ignorance. And Allah is neither just like a pro-capital or no pro-labor. And Allah does not have any interest into making distinction between man and woman and nature and human. Therefore, Allah is the perfect impartial spectator to define who should get what. And the conclusion, based on just like our axiom, we said in initial equation 0, this is going to be represent the Mizani state, because Allah created the world in a Mizani condition. In this Mizani condition, we have human, earth, and society only, and everything is running perfectly fine because there is no concentration of the power in the society. And therefore, the A, B, C is the inherent value of the human, earth, and society in this case. The society gets its right as a zakah, and the human and human and earth is getting a share to reproduction, for their reproduction, as the Maqasid al-Sharia is arguing. And in other case, we have more realistic one. In this case, we have capital as well, because this is much more what we are actually practicing. In this case as well, we are saying actually the degree is the capital try to contribute to social capital. Actually, it is falah function is dependent on this contribution. And therefore, when they fail to just like, compensate A, B, C, D, and in this regard, the rebel, just like, the treasury is going to be intervene and try to just like set the corrections balance. Thank you very much. I'm happy to just like answer any questions.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Mehmet. Prof?
Thank you, Mehmet. I know I'm aware of your work, but I have a slight different position on the utility theory, which I work on this one. I know, I'll be very quick. The point that you are entering into the axioms, and that provides a quite substantial framework, but when it comes to utility, or when it comes to basically to the value, I believe that Islamic other values create that notification, and I will go mainly towards the concept of ma'ruf and munkar. Now, ma'ruf increase what you are talking, that will be the foundational force, whereas munkar you are trying to avoid that everything will decrease your value. Now, there's another pole element will come out of this theoretically. It's a status quo. If you don't do anything, it's a missed opportunity. Purely in economic theory now we are talking about. So what are the factors that will increase your ma'ruf? Could be the knowledge, salihat, amal, and all these implications which are perfectly will fit on your model, but in the later stage. But the initial stage will require much more profound approach of ma'ruf. And on the same time, munkar, what are the issues that are causing the damaging the part of the value or negative implications, and then also missed opportunity that you don't do, but you are just leaving it open. I think that will be the initial stage on which foundation you could build your model. That implications comes on the labor, on the capital, and other things.
Yeah, actually. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Aliyah, in terms of utility function, actually, I was trying to take that idea of falah function. And in this idea of falah function, is actually, it's a kind of resemble to idea of the utility function. And ma'ruf and munkar, I think we have to just like consider the idea of ma'ruf, the way that actually we are sharing the resources that we have been bestowed. The ma'ruf of the time that we are bestowed, the ma'ruf of the wealth that we are bestowed,
And as the Surah Al-Asr is actually mentioning, then the resources are the resources that we are entrusted, the time, the wealth, and the youth, and the physical wealth is all kinds of resources that we have to use in the right way to just like earning to falah. And the minimum level, the time, as just like our falah function, if we pray one time, 1 hour a day, is a kind of minimum threshold, as the zakah is the minimum threshold for us. But the rest is subject to your falah function. It's all up to you. You are free to just like use it. But in the Surah Al-Asr, Allah says it will perish. Whether you're going to use for the sake of Allah, and that means you to contribute to social capital of the society. Otherwise, if you keep it, just like at that 23 hours, that's gonna just like eat it up, that the resources that you have. Therefore, this is the definition of the ma'ruf that I understand.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Our next presenter is Brother Muhammad Tawfiq Afandi from Durham University, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. I'd like to thank the organizer for organizing such amazing summit these 2 days, mashallah. And I'd like to thank panel professor for your time, and inshallah the feedback you will give me after this. And I'd like to thank generous funding from Indonesian Ministry of Finance for this research. Thank you. Today I'm going to present my research about improving financial inclusion by AI-powered Maqasid psychometrics. Being a poor person in a poor community with poor infrastructure is beyond average person comprehension. Imagine you are not here, you're flying somewhere where you see a son has no option but to help his father, trying to find anything valuable from this pile of trash. And he's not alone. Many children around the globe, but especially in my case, Indonesia, they have to leave the school just because they need to help their parent to try to run away from poverty. And there's something special actually with this boy. He's a hard worker. Come on, you are poor. You cannot just sit back and relax, right? This person is a curious person, always want to learn new thing. And this boy, he knows nothing about cheating, knows nothing about corruption. This person knows integrity. And when I'm talking about child, this reminds me to Adam. Yesterday, if you're here, our youngest member of Summit, who asked a very strong and valid question with his beautiful and lovely voice. He asked a question, what will Islamic finance contribute to a little person like me? He asked that question. And this is the question every child around the globe is asking. Exactly. Can you provide access to finance? Can you guarantee that when I grow up, I will get the same level of education, the same access to growth, the same access? You know, it's a tough question because what? Because if you are excluded from financial realm, financial industry, if you need some finance in some country, it's really, really hard, and sometimes you need to pay a very high level of interest. When I say very high level of interest, in your wildest imagination, in your wildest dream, what do you think is the high percentage, high level of interest? Can I hear some voice? Sorry? That's really wild. Okay, yeah. I will finish in 10 minutes, inshallah. I have time now, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. So it is 500%. 500%. but how to solve the situation. And Indonesia is not alone here. Along with Indonesia, we have also in Nigeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and also South Sudan and some other countries struggling with these problems. We see the potential in microfinance. We see their potential there. But there are some problems there, of course. Most problem is asymmetric information. We have adverse selection, and we have moral hazard, right? But we came across to this amazing work by AFL Harvard several years ago, and they are doing what's so-called psychometric, which is basically how can you turn understanding of personality into predicting default. I believe Mr. Hanif will be very interested with this. And it's basically using Big Five tests, integrity test, digit sum test. And they have 67% of accuracy. Keep it in mind, 67%. I will ask that question later, okay. And we're coming to what is our own framework with this. Alhamdulillah, today we have heard a lot from Brother Abdul Qadir, Brother Farah, and Brother Putri and Shirin. Lots of things related to this. And Allah has said, and we always hear that, Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan. Wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkar wal baghi ya'idukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. So we should use this blessed guidance to empower us. Maqasid, yes. This is transcendent, comprehensive, and universally compatible. And it's just right in the middle of the backbone of value transmission from Allah, the originator of value, straight to us, human. And we are turning to artificial intelligence. We are using two frameworks here, neural network and decision tree, which is basically mimicking how our brain is working by a series of nodes, series of layers, with basically a very complex series of multiple regression. And here we are partnering with 5 partners, alhamdulillah. We call Indonesia Baitul Mal wa Tamwil. Some of them very big. This one has 300 branches. Some other have only 2 branches or 10 or 50. And then what exactly we are doing, we are collecting survey using 820 data, which is not easy because we need to hire about 30 research assistants to collect data because we need to come in person because we are talking about poor of the poor here. And then we do what's so-called as CFA, confirmatory factor analysis, and we can see here all of the value are fine. When we use 5 factor, 4 or 3, all are around 3, which is fine. And we came across to new little sieve, as Prof. Mehmet says, let's just move a little bit from Ghazali and Maqasid. So we move a little bit, although maybe not so far. So this we go to purification, faiz, amana, honor, and justice. And then we do regression. Yes, researchers love regression. But then when you run regression, what happened? While being female associated negatively to default, which is great. If you are female, meaning you are less likely to default, great. Age associated positively, okay. Income negatively, okay, fine, so far so good. But then all of our 5 factors has no statistically significance to default. Oh my God, this is nightmare for researcher. But it's a nightmare, you sleep, you wake up, you work again. Okay, yes, and then, okay. Give me 1 minute, Mr. Hadif will help me to. Because why? Because it's going to be important. If you're a bank, you want to quickly give decision, okay, I'll give you credit or not, just because you do it this AI. And we do the AlBaraka, and by 2 of the AlBaraka, we found here that we can go for, oops, no, I go too fast. Yeah, I go too fast. We can go now to, okay, we go to 70% of accuracy. Remember just now, 67% from Harvard? We improve it to be 70% by Maqasid. This is small improvement, but this is giving us hope. Hope for Islamic finance industry that we can do even better than conventional finance, and hope for that poor people. Because sometimes hope is all what they need. Thank you.
So Arban, we have 1 question only.
Very interesting research. I like that part of the psychology that you enter neuroscience and Maqasid. I mean, because of the timing, I assume that you follow the Ghazalian framework for Maqasid in this sense, in this model.
Yeah, in the beginning, we started with that as additional theory, but then after we are doing what's so-called as confirmatory factor analysis in some methodology, then we get new grouping, and then we need to make sense of this new grouping by doing survey to literature, and we come up with that new 5 factoring.
Okay, so in that sense, this provides you quite a unique approach to entrepreneurial side. What are the possibilities of the startup members in terms of entrepreneurial activities, whether they will succeed in the long run or short run in terms of the defaulting or not defaulting?
Yes,
that
yes.
gives you so that's provided new risk measurement for the banks in relations by using the Maqasid approach. But that will be interesting now, because one of the Maqasid things is that as like family, I don't know what are the numbers here.
Yes, yes.
As the number of your kids increase, your chances of default increases, and also chances to get the loan also falls down, which is absolutely against Maqasid perception. And that's the current methodology in the banks. So I wouldn't know whether this will actually replace that and provide the different avenues for tackling the risk in terms of the equity. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What a wonderful day, mashallah. Our last presenter is Sister Sarah Ahmed Youssef from Angelia University, please.
Okay, I'll try to keep it quick. Okay, thank you. So I want to start off by saying this is not a PhD research. I'm merely applying the model I used for my master's dissertation onto Sharia compliant firms. And my initial topic was with ESG assurance, but when looking at the Islamic finance market, I realized it's important to take a step back and to examine the impact of ESG performance on the financial performance of Sharia compliant companies. So I want to start off here by saying that according to IFDI reports, global Islamic financial assets expanded by 69% in the past 5 years and 163% in the past decade. This growth reflects a healthy industry driven by strong balance sheets, high profits, regulator support, and sustained demand by both customers and investors alike. The industry's geographical expansion has brought more diversity and depth to markets using different instruments, structures, and investor capital, for example. And in the last decade, it gained a foothold not just in Muslim-majority countries, but also in other countries like the UK, where it's less Muslim-majority. It's difficult to fully capture the size of the Islamic finance sector in the UK because many transactions combine elements of both Islamic and conventional financing. However, according to Refinitiv data, Islamic funds in Europe and the UK account for nearly 8% of the global Islamic funds for 2022. As for corporate governance, although it's been noted to improve, the IFDI find there's still room for improvements. And in fact, in the report, they quote that there's a need for governments and regulators to enforce more CSR and ESG disclosures in order to accurately capture market size and increase transparency. Islamic finance funds actually reached $1.5 billion in the past year, and outstanding green and ESG sukuk values stood at $24 billion. This, if anything, highlights the significant growth and impact of Islamic finance in promoting sustainable development. And it indicates strong investor interest and commitment to funding projects that are not only socially responsible, but also environmentally sustainable. This showcases the potential for Islamic finance to drive positive change and in this world. Anyways, moving on. I want to start by saying that the ESG principle is a concept that connects the predominantly financial concepts, predominantly financial considerations of investment based on risk and reward to sustainable development, which is a relatively new approach to growth that seeks to reconcile short-term needs with long-term sustainability by ensuring that this development does not harm future generations' chances to thrive. Out of the many studies conducted on this topic, Lee et al. Is one of the ones I like to highlight because it sort of has a comprehensive view of the progression of research in the ESG field. And it highlights that it's most common in developed USA, Canada, and UK. And in these developed countries, it is highly centralized, as opposed to being usually fragmented in developing ones. There's also low author collaboration and cooperation, which means that there is room for improvement in this research. And they've highlighted that many studies find an insurance-like role of ESG, whereby the sustainable investments of certain subsidiaries can act as a way of mitigating the negative spillover effects of their parent companies, as act as a way of them to gain legitimacy within the market. Even though much research has been conducted to examine this relationship between ESG performance and financial performance, their findings are diverse. Many find a positive relationship, but others also find a negative association, and others even uncover a linear relationship. And this may be, and often is, due to the fact that they consider the three environmental, social, and governance factors, even though each one of these has its own intricate and complex interplay with each other, as well as with their impact on financial performance. Others also, others say this difference is due to the intricate and complex nature of ESG. There's also a lack of agreement among studies that define the relationship between the separate E, S, and G factors on financial performance. Despite the fact that many studies agree that governance is correlated with financial performance, there's still much debate going on around social performance and environmental performance. So what does this mean for Sharia compliant firms? One study, Asif and Akhlaq, suggests that viewing Sharia compliance as one study, Asif and Akhlaq, suggests that focusing on ESG criteria in Sharia screening will improve the quality of Islamic firms in terms of stability, enhancing stakeholder relationships, and improving brand loyalty. This trend is not merely about market segmentation, but it's a way of fostering trust, ethical responsibility, and sustainability within corporate practices, something that's been notably absent within the conventional financial market. If we look at the idea of excluding unethical businesses, we can find many similarities between ESG considerations and Islamic investment in terms of avoiding harmful investment, and they both require screening methodologies to determine what is ethical investment. I'm trying to go quickly. I'm going to skip over a few things. Sorry. So actually, Ashraf and Khawaja in 2016, no, I need to go back. Okay, so this is the proposed impact of ESG assurance, ESG performance. My sample consists of 107 firms listed on the S&P 500 Sharia Index. It covers a time period from 2011 to 2023. These are the sectors in which they fall under. Majority falls under the industrials sector, and all of this data was obtained from LSE database, Refinitiv. I want to say that in that part here, don't worry, all I want you to understand from this table is that I've used Tobin's Q and MCA, market capitalization to assets, to measure firm performance. I chose one market-based variable and one accounting-based variable in order to capture a comprehensive view of how these separate E, S, and G scores impact financial performance. In the following slide, we can see that Tobin's Q and MCA have high correlation, which means they can be used as substitutes, which is good for us. We can also see that initially, environmental score, along with leverage, I believe, and with leverage, have a significant negative correlation with financial performance. It's important to understand that at this initial stage, this signifies that the relationship is uncertain and requires further testing, which is what we find here. These are two tables that highlight the relationship, where we find there's a significant relationship between the ESG score, social score, environmental score for firms on Tobin's Q and on market capitalization to assets. This means that this nonlinear relationship, these are certain thresholds that companies must reach in order to start seeing an improvement in financial performance. And this is significant because in traditional conventional finance research, we find that governance is the variable that impacts financial performance the most. Meanwhile, here we see the opposite. It's social and environmental scores, which can have multiple reasons. I've translated these scores to just so that you understand, it's not just numbers being thrown at you. The 60.27 for for ESG is a B score. The 55.48 for social is B minus, and the 75 for environmental scores is an A minus. Can I just say one last? Sorry. So, as I said, this is not as in conventional finance, and this might be due to the fact that governance is not a differentiating factor per se when it comes for Sharia-compliant firms, although environmental is, because it's completely in line with the new sustainability initiative within the financial market. And the social score as well is very interesting. I'm going to stop there because I know we don't have enough time.
I'm so sorry for that. Thank you, Sarah. Can we have just one feedback from?
And thank you, Sarah. It's exciting. I know you were very excited as well. A lot of studies, as you mentioned, happening, but just want you to look into your results, because your firms are not from Muslim countries. They are from environment where corporate governance issues are mostly settled, the regulations and all that, as well as the environmental awareness. It would have been amazing to do a comparative study with the firms selected from Western part of the world, which are Sharia compliant by definition of screening process, and also Sharia compliant firms from GCC, Malaysia, and etc., to look at how the larger political economy environment, governance environment, as well as the governance structure, as well as the environmental issues are affecting. Because that would have been given us the real dynamics on the ground, how it is happening. But continue. Congratulations.
That's really good. Thank you. This is something I really want to take into consideration. But I have to say, I don't have a lot of time to prepare for this. I will take this into consideration going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. I now invite His Excellency, the Secretary General of AlBaraka Forum for Islamic Economy, Mr. Yusuf Hassan Khalawi, to present certificates to our researchers. Mr. Abdul Qadir Thomas. Professor Mehmet Asutai. Professor Alaija and Professor Jasim Al-Uqla. Sister Farah Muhammad. Sister Shirley Botri. After that, we can take. Sister Shireen Mardani. Brother Mehmet Artuk. Mehmet Artuk. Brother Muhammad Tawfiq Afandi. Sister Sarah Yusuf. Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward, inshallah, to seeing you in the next year. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.